we are talking interim budget right here on EconoChat Let's Talk Business with Mr. Daniel Steinman. We are in the third part of our talk. So, Mr. Daniel Steinman, not halfway, third part of our talk.
67%.
Okay, so we are talking halfway, of the interim budget. We touch on, if you can touch on the revenue or maybe the operational, percentage of the interim budget, or just give us some insight on where we are in regards to statistics.
Also, remember, just now we asked this big question: why the interim budget? Why bother? What is so good about it? And the verdict was, it is a snapshot. It gives us a view of what have we accomplished in the first semester. So it's a performance-based consideration, and it gives us a view of what we need to fix for the next 6 months. And that is more like a strategic plan, do we need to change anything, or what do we need to change? So this brings me to the 3 key matrices of the interim budget, and this all comes from the minister's speech. And the first one is on the revenue side. Now, 6 months after the new revenue cycle began, the government has collected 50% of the revenues due. So it means that the revenue is smack on target. It's not falling short. It's not overperforming. But what we have learned in the history of the past 20 years or so, since actually more since about 2013, is that if we are smack on the halfway mark, if we have collected 50% of the expected revenue at the end of the first semester, we will probably collect more than what we budgeted for. So, and this we can already see that on the revenue side, we are at 50%, but the actual income is some 2 billion higher than what was anticipated. And if you carry this forward, and all things being equal, except that we tend to go on holiday in the middle of December to middle of January. But even then, you've got a very strong influx from the end of January, February until the end of March, which is the end of the fiscal year. So we will probably exceed the 100% mark. Revenue will be on target and slightly above, giving the minister the flexibility to increase spending, and that is exactly what he's done. Now this is very important to understand. Growth has been revised downwards by about 2.7 billion, mostly on the back of poor performing diamond revenue. The diamond industry is in a bit of a crunch.
It is.
So it's dividends that the government will not receive. But the nominal growth is so much above what we expected that the minister has immediately adjusted the expenditure side by 2.5 billion. So do you see that growth downgrade is actually a non-event? It's been overtaken by the better than expected revenue that is coming in. Now, if you look at operational budget, the execution rate there is 48%, which is close enough. The personnel core of the government is never static, and some of the aspects that will impact that rate is the CMAS part that the CMAS shortfall that the government has to fund, and certain guarantees to parastatals. So these are normal events in running the finances of a country. So 48% execution rate on operational budget is very good. It's almost there. It's basically there. And to fix it between now and April next year is very easy. Now we come to the development budget. Now there is one of only 2 red lights that I noticed in the interim budget. The execution rate there is only 37%. That is a dangerous sign. Because remember, in before the current Minister of Finance, let's call it in the recession dispensation.
Oh, okay.
We had this environments left, right, and center. Environments.
Libérement, yeah.
And what it meant is that we took money away from where it wasn't used, and we just patched all the holes we had in the recession. That was a dangerous thing because that reduced the development budget. Now it's very difficult to adjust the budget so that we can get back to the allocations for infrastructure development project that we were on, let's say, in 2013, 2014, when even 2015, when we were at the top of our growth cycle.
Yeah.
So what tends to happen is that if the money is not put into the projects that it is intended for, when there's a crisis, the first response is to environment some of that money. Take it away, put it somewhere else. And then later on, it's difficult to put it back. So what happens is you are basically stealing from our future. Why do I say that? Because if you don't continue to invest in road, desalination, bridges, irrigation, ports, airports, then you shoot yourself in the foot. You reduce your future growth because you don't invest. And I said there are two red signs. We're running out of time. One is the execution rate on the development budget. The government must fix that in the next 6 months. Prompt. The other one is the amount that we pay in interest on our debt. Now that is about 14% of revenue. That is also at a dangerous level. That's also something that we've been talking to each other for 5 years and saying it must come down, must come down. What happened? It didn't come down. So where are we now? 14%, exactly the same amount of money that is allocated or designated for development projects is now taken up by interest. Imagine if we could use all that money to build bridges and build roads.
And well, I hope that looking at our next budget, which will be tabled, of course, next year, that these percentages will increase for the better.
I think they will.
Okay. Well, on that note, I thank you so much for keeping it locked to the Power Station Energy 100. Unfortunately, we will have to say goodbye to you, our listeners, and I would like to say goodbye to you, Mr. Daniel Steinman, until we meet again next week.